recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the September 13th, the Friday the 13th, 2013 edition of the show. And today my special guest is entrepreneur, radio personality, sitting on the other side for a change, voice, deity, comic book creator, what have you, Roy Eavins. Roy, thank you for coming by and dropping in and being on the show.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This is exciting. So it's like you said, it's fun and different to kind of be on this side of the microphone for a change.
Well, I'll be gentle with you. Actually, I don't really know how to be any other way. But let me ask you this: where are you hailing from today?
Well, today I am in Athens, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
We're about 45 miles outside of Metro Atlanta. So, but, home.
And where is home for you?
Home for me is Palm Beach, Florida. That's where I grew up. Riviera Beach, more specifically, but Palm Beach County. I graduated high school out of Miami, though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty much a born and bred Floridian. This is my first time living outside of the state.
Okay. Now, well, what brought you there specifically?
Restarting my life, kind of getting things going. I went through some changes back in 2008. I went back to Orlando. While living in Tallahassee, I went back to Orlando for a couple of years to spend a little bit more time with my kids as they were growing up. And then I needed a change. I needed to do something different, and I thought the first part of that was leaving the state. So that's what brought me up here.
And how long have you been there now?
I have been in the Athens, Atlanta area for actually just about 2 years. I moved here in August of 2011.
Yeah, how's Freaknik?
You said how's Freaknik?
No, I'm saying how are the people treating you there?
Oh, they're you know what? It's okay. It's slightly different, not a whole lot. Being in the South, it's not as different as Florida is as I thought. It's okay. It's nice. I'm still enjoying it. So.
Okay. Would you consider yourself like still kind of settling in, or are you used to it?
No, I'm pretty much used to it. The funny thing is the area that I live in Athens actually reminds me a whole lot of Tallahassee, which is where I went to college, and I really enjoyed that area. I liked it. It's kind of rural, but there's still enough stuff around that if I want to get out and do some things. And then it's close enough to Atlanta where I can, if I really wanted to go out and get the city life, so to speak, I can.
That's not bad. I mean, it's like the best of both worlds, isn't it?
Right. That's definitely it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your growing up time. You did that in Florida. What kind of things? You've done so much. I mean, I don't know where to start asking you. What kind of creative things you did, and at what age did they start manifesting themselves? I guess that's the big question right there. I can imagine you probably weren't a radio deity, at the age of 12 or anything like that. But what kinds of stuff did you start out doing creatively, and how old?
Wow, man, creatively it's kind of interesting. I actually used to be into performing. I did a lot of theater and a lot of singing when I was younger. Of course, as most people do, I started off singing in church, but then I got more involved in some things in school. Like I said, did a lot of acting there while I was, middle school is really my younger days. In my elementary and middle school, I did a lot of the little school plays, things like that. Went into drama in my when I got into the 7th grade, which was middle school for us in Florida. So just the performing side of it was really where a lot of what my creative type things were. The funny thing is I actually used to be, as I put it, an extremely good doodler. I could, doodle little people and little things. And being a superhero comic book fan back then, I used to, doodle a lot of different, characters and stuff. I actually have no idea of what happened and where that changed, but I eventually got to the point where I can't even, draw. I can't draw anything but a conclusion at this point, and my handwriting's bad. So, yeah.
Well,
That's
if that being the case, do you do much? You obviously, your bio here talks about some comic book creation. Is that something you're still involved in, and do you do it like from a production perspective rather than the actual drawing and inking and things like that, or has that kind of fallen by the wayside?
No, actually, this is the 20th anniversary of the initial launching of my comic book company, which was Pyramid Comics, and this year particularly. And we are doing some things that we actually put out republished in a digital format our original 2 titles this past year. And then we put out the second issues of both of those books, which had previously not been released in a digital format. I actually, when I got to that point, I became the writer of the comic book. So I am involved in the character development, the production, and everything. But yeah, I actually, as I moved into high school, it was kind of interesting. A lot of things started changing for me, and like I said, my mind moved from being able to do the doodling to possibly going into the artistic side of it, to the writing and the words. That's kind of also where I got into the whole desire to get into the radio side of it. I started doing a lot of different things, being involved in things like student government, and that gave me the opportunity to actually go out and speak a lot of different places and do a lot of different things. So that's kind of where that transition happened. But yeah, no, I'm a writer. I'm a writer now, so that's the part of it that I do. I actually am more into the writing of the stories, development of the characters, providing backstories. I've always had a vivid imagination, regardless of which side of it I was on. So that really lends itself to be able to just come up with a lot of crazy things out there. So,
well, that's kind of a less than normal combination, because not only are you, it sounds like you are extroverted in that you like to perform. You don't have a problem with getting in front of people and performing. And yet you still have, you're still the creative in terms of, the singular pursuit of writing and things like that. So, it sounds like a nice balance there. Does it feel that way to you, or do you prefer one over the other?
It probably is a balance. I tell folks one of the terms I use when I talk about it or try to describe myself, I say I'm simply complicated, and I'm the constant change. It's always a lot of difference. I had one of my professors actually in college who was involved in the radio station where I started actually in radio, describe me as a gregarious extrovert. When I first got the recommendation, I had to go look both of those words up, because I was like, what? So it is. I'm very comfortable in front of crowds. Based on the things that I do it a lot. Like I said, we do a lot of broadcasting in front of major sporting events. So we're always there. We're always in front of people. Don't have a problem with the microphones or the cameras. But the truth is I really value my time where I can just sit and imagine things and being in, enclosed or tight areas with not a whole lot of people around or anybody at all even at times. So.
Sure. So when you got to college, what kinds of things were you interested in once you got there? Were you, you mentioned the radio station. What about the artistic side?
I actually started to get into theater when I got into college. But for some reason, I kind of never did it. What I did get involved in, because at the time, I had my career path set out. I always felt like I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment industry. But coming out of high school, my goal was to become an attorney and go into corporate entertainment law. So I kind of focused on that side of it. I had been in the mock trial team while I was in high school. So when I got to college, I started the mock trial team at my college. I was involved in the pre-law society. I got involved in student government. Just all of those things that would have moved me towards a legal/political career. Because at one point I wanted to be governor of the state of Florida. So,
okay,
we I kind of focused on that. So I actually I put the creative stuff down actually for a while. And the thing that actually triggered it was when I met my friend who eventually became my partner for my comic book company.
Okay.
And it was a gentleman named Eric Carlton, actually. He was from San Antonio, Texas. But Eric was the roommate of a friend of mine who knew that I was a writer and that I loved comic books. I still had some of my comic book stuff with me that I brought to college and everything. I left most of it at home just to try to keep it safe. But he knew that, and he was like, "Man, you've got to meet my roommate because this dude's like crazy. He like draws all these characters and stuff." And so I was like, "Hey, okay, well, cool." So we finally, got a chance to meet, and it's like it was like a kid walking into a candy store, and it was crazy because all around his room he had posted up all of the characters that he had drawn, and I was just like, "Whoa, dude, we have got to put together a comic book." And he was like, "Well, I just draw." I'm like, "Dude, I write." I'm like, "We can do this." So, I'm one of those people. It's like if I talk about something, I'm usually going to be trying to do it relatively soon. I was tied up with a lot of stuff initially when he and I met, but about 6 months later, I circled back around and I was like, "Hey, man, let's see what we can do here. Let's put something together." So we started sitting down and we had him pull a couple of the characters and say, "Well, which characters do you want to work with the first?" And he gave me what backstories he had, and then we created a little bit more and came up with our first project and our first book, which was called The Future at that time. So
at the same time, did you kind of transition your master plan away from practicing law, or were you still kind of thinking about that in the background, and this was an adjunct to that kind of work, or not an adjunct, but in addition to trying to get your law license and practicing?
Yeah, and no, it actually kind of pushed me away. That was part of the reason that it pushed me away. I actually, as I got to college and started getting involved, the only reason I was doing law school was to go into politics, because I figured, hey, if you're going to make laws, you should understand them. So that was really my entire purpose of going to law school. Besides trying at the initial part of it, trying to be a corporate attorney for a media entity. But as I actually spent physical time in Tallahassee, which is the state capital of Florida, and being on the Capitol on a day-to-day basis, I mean, literally seeing money change hands, hearing the deals being made, I was just like, yeah, there's no way that this is going to work for me unless I can do what Ross Perot did and, just pay for my own campaign completely myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really the thing that pushed me away, because I just, I'm kind of old-fashioned, I guess. If you're serving in politics, you're supposed to be serving for the right reasons. You're supposed to be there to help serve the people and to try to make things better for everybody in doing things. And it gets very difficult to do that when, when people feel like you owe them something, or
right?
They own you. So,
and you look at it now. I mean, I don't even think you would qualify to be governor of Florida now, because you're not an ex-felon like the current governor. I've said it. Yeah, let him come talk to me about it. But no, I mean, you're right. The thing about politics is once you get in it, you understand that I think that the bulk of everything that has to do with politics is a matter of compromise. And it's kind of tough when you realize that that compromise leads to, an environment or a circumstance that, like you said, doesn't serve the people. It's not pure. It's tainted in a way that even though you know that this may be how you have to get it done, it still stinks. And a lot of people just don't want that stink on them,
Right. Yeah, well, the funny thing about it, because I actually still do political consulting. I'm a media consultant, so I usually, consult people for their putting their properties together, finding out what they need and want to do as it
Right.
relates to getting their things out for their campaigns, imaging and all that kind of stuff. But the reality of it is, and this is what people have to realize, the very nature of politics is about compromising. Now,
Yeah.
that's compromising your wants and your desires. The reality of life is that most needs are pretty much the same. Everybody needs the same things. It's just the stuff that we want that becomes different. And that is where the issues fall into place with it. And, people want their own personal agendas pushed through. And, like one of the big things that I'm a huge proponent of, and I've talked about it on several political programs and shows, is that, okay, no one can be president for more than 2 terms. That should be across the board. You should not have people who can stay in a job longer than the president does.
Right.
So you've got senators and Congress people who've been in these jobs for 20 years, and after your first 2 terms, you're no longer in this to serve the people. You're in this; it's now a career. And so, what do? You do whatever it takes to keep your job.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I think a lot of our issues come in at. So,
I think the last politician who actually had that kind of who negated that attitude and stood as the antithesis of it was probably Teddy Kennedy. I don't think anybody else has served, in a way that was genuinely for the people. I mean, you can say whatever you want about his politics and things like that, but I suppose when you have that much money, you're also far less swayed by those who can provide you more.
Right.
So anyway, let's talk about some of your stuff. Obviously, you're not in politics other than as a political consultant, which everybody's got to make some money. Everybody has to have a job. Everybody has to do things that are also interesting to them, and I think that also appeals to your extroverted nature, in that what you're trying to do is you're trying to help people with their image. You're trying to help people project the proper persona, maybe put together the right. The right kind of slant to their campaign that will appeal to people. I mean, that seems kind of like a natural outgrowth to some of the kind of extroverted things that you had done earlier in life. I mean, what other kinds of things? I mean, you talk about broadcasting. Describe some of the things that you do currently with your broadcast career.
Okay, well, I am first off program director, I guess, and COO of the SCIFI Media Group, which is
okay.
the reason I ended up in Athens. When I actually initially moved to Georgia, I moved to Atlanta, but I got offered a job and over in Athens to help put together this media project, and so I did that, and we initially started off trying to do some things just here in the local market. But we really found out that the local market really can't sustain it. So my CEO is now letting me kind of move back into the areas of the things that I'm more familiar with, or not necessarily more familiar with, but things that I've been doing more of in the past few years, which is the internet-based broadcasting. So
okay.
I do Monday through Friday. I actually do a music show online. It's called The Groove Session.
Mm-hmm.
I play pretty much old school R&B. Every now and then I'll drop in some old school hip hop. Mostly stuff pre-92, realistically.
Okay.
Or the newer things that we would play are really considered the neo soul artists, real soul music,
right.
that kind of thing. So that's from the music side of it. We actually are in the process of relaunching my gospel radio station along with our urban station and my talk station coming up. So we're working on that project. Those networks will be relaunched the radio networks will be relaunched by the end of next week. So, kind of excited about that. The other side of it is the broadcast stuff that we've done from the video or internet television side.
Okay.
My primary product was HBCU sports, and I attended Florida A&M University, and it was just one of those things where we're just like, I can't, I got tired of people asking me, well, who's your favorite football team? They'd be like, well, who's your favorite college football team? I said, FAMU. They're like, no, we mean a real school, which, in other words, they meant a Division I school. And my thing was always, well, that is my team, that is a real school, and I'm concerned with the schools that play against me. But
sure.
We could never find information on HBCU sports anywhere. I mean, it was ridiculous. We were having such a hard time doing it. And so, I thought about it. I said, well, I can't be the only person that wants to get more information about HBCUs. So we actually did some survey work. And so, we went out and we surveyed, probably about 3,000 people in about four different cities, and tallied up, and we saw that there was a need. So me and my partner started the Black College Sports Network. And what we started off doing was basically doing a weekly broadcast about HBCU sports. So it was one place that you could go to get all the scores, updates, and highlights, hear from interviews from the coaches of the programs, talk to players, the athletic directors, and everything. And we started that in 98. And the ironic thing is that this was back then, this was before high-speed internet and everything. It was a 2-hour show. We recorded it in 15-minute segments. Well, it took 45 minutes to download each 15-minute segment of the show back then.
Yes.
And we actually had 1,000 people a week downloading the show.
That's unbelievable.
And so, we started seeing that, and we were just like, okay. And at the time, I was actually still working in radio, so I was working in traditional radio, and I had already noticed that they were doing a lot more computer-based things. You're familiar with radio. I started when they were still reel-to-reel, the vinyl, searching for first sound.
Absolutely. The 80-pound turntables and. I was in radio from about 1975 or 76 through the early 80s, and analog radio was an animal unto itself, Yeah.
So and it was really interesting. So as I was working there, I actually at the time was working for a Cox radio station. So I was working for one of the major corporations. And I just started noticing how much they were doing a lot of computer-based stuff. And then they brought in I believe it was a system called Maestro, which they started using to program the music. And I started looking at this, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, all this stuff is done via the computer. It's done online. I saw them moving towards the Internet and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of did some research. Again, research is another one of my backgrounds, and I started to see that they were really buying in and pushing toward this Internet thing. So I looked at it and was like, you know what, this Internet thing might be all right. So I kind of went all in 98, doing our first start off with a sports show, and then we ended up putting up one of our stations, which the initial station was called V108 The Vibe, and I started to see that, wow, if I can do this radio station, why not do some other stuff on the Internet? Why not be able to do television? Why not be able to do that? So that's what we did, and that's kind of how we got there.
Well, see, that's the cool thing. If you're an early adopter and you fill a niche well, you have all of the advantage of everybody else discovering emerging technologies at one time. If like you have a 56K baud modem, and you have 1,000 people downloading your show, which is 3 times longer than, or the download takes 3 times longer than it takes for them to watch or listen to the show. But being early has its value. So being on top of technology makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, I remember when the commercial radio station in I spent time in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I apologize to everybody for that. But I went to school in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and when the first computerized radio station came there, I mean, everybody was just, they were just fascinated with how that was. I mean, everything was in it. The commercials were in it, the station breaks, everything. And people, obviously some people weren't too happy because they lost their jobs. But, now, as far as music stations go, there aren't but a handful that use live DJs anymore.
Oh yeah, yep.
And then let's see, you do the music show, right? Oh, do me a favor, tell everybody where they can find that show.
Okay.
Is that at your www.myjbn.com? Is it under that website?
Well, actually, with the relaunch, so by the end of next week, all of the sites, all of the things you'll be able to find from that particular link again. Actually, like I said, we pulled it down, but in the process of doing some revamping of it and getting some things together. But for right now, they can actually find us at SCICityTelevision.com. SCICityTelevision.com.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So, yeah, we're doing that, and we're on Facebook as Sky City Media Group, as well as Jericho Broadcast Networks. So.
Yeah. And, what's amazing to me, I mean, I've just learned something new just by talking to you. I had no idea that they made newer music after 1983. Seriously?
Yeah, there was some good stuff that came after 83,
Oh,
it was only for about another 12 years or so. Then it became really few and far between, but yeah.
I tell people this, and they get upset with me, but as far as I'm concerned, they go, oh, man, we have great music now. And I tell them, no, I'm sorry, the best year for music in the history of the world was 1969. And they go, oh, you're one of them old-ass people. So I'm going to tune in just to hear what you get to play, and I hope others do too. So you have the relaunch coming up, and you're still involved you're actually doing the writing and the production work for your comic book. What other kinds of things are you doing now, creatively?
Okay.
Or is that enough?
Oh, well, yeah, that's another one of my problems. It's like I really don't even feel comfortable if I'm not doing 3 or 4 things at one time.
Yeah.
But no, we're actually the first part of it is, like I said, we are doing some things for our network relaunch. One of the parts of that is that we're actually doing an update of one of the books that I actually developed. My partner and I kind of lost contact. He ended up getting married with my comic book company. He ended up getting married, and he's over in Texas, and I know he had some things going on with his life, so we were trying to reconnect, but he's been really, really busy because he's become this even more amazing artist into the digital age. So he's like very, very sought after. So we're trying to get some stuff together. So I kind of put the things that we did with our old books on hold. And one of the books that I actually developed from the characters from the very beginning was a set called Crossbows. And it's the way that the story is designed, it is a play on the Robin Hood story.
Okay.
But it's actually set kind of in a paramilitary group background situation, covert ops and things of that nature. And I ended up hooking up with another one of my friends from college, a gentleman named Daryl Champion, who is updating the characters for me for that particular book. And we're going to bring that out. But what we are doing with it is I came up with the concept. My partner actually had developed these flash-based comic books that we did. And the funny thing is like I see a lot of people have started doing them even with some of the major companies.
Sure.
Like in the past 3 or 4 years. Well, he actually developed this thing for us like 12 years ago. And it was ridiculous. When he first did it, I like lost my mind. I was like, dude, you got to be kidding me. So what we're going to do with those, and this is where we're actually kind of soliciting other folks who have books and who might want to get involved. I know you talk about it. Most of the folks who are in our age group remember Reading Rainbow.
Right.
Where they would basically just put the book on the screen, the blank, the base page of the book, flip it, and, you'd have different people reading the books. Well, we're going to do that with the comic books. We're going to do that using our flash, the little flash system that we have. So as you turn the pages, the script or the story of the actual comic book will be read out to you. It'll be acted out by different voice actors. And, this again goes to the whole part of us doing what we can until we can do what we want, which, of course, ultimately our goal is to do animated cartoons of the comic book. But animation takes time and it takes, more money than what we have right now. So the key is, or the idea is that we want to kick off basically a Saturday morning lineup of ethnic-based superhero books or, comic books that will be read via our video-based television network for young kids to, be able to see more images of different people that look like them. So that's one of the things that we're doing is like I said, we're getting ready to start soliciting people who have different books and who want to get involved in that. We're really excited about that whole thing. And that kind of leads me to the next thing, which is me being able to live out one of my dreams, which is I'm going to be doing the voice in an animated movie for a character. The folks over at All Nights over in Europe, they have their Hardwired book they've been working on and doing some stuff, and they, were on Black Science Fiction Society and said, hey, we're looking for voice actors, and I submitted it, and I got picked to voice one of the primary characters, Nathaniel Luke.
Well, congratulations, man.
Yeah, that's a dream. I told people, I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were like, well, dude, you've got your own comic book company. You can do that anyway. I said, well, it's one thing to voice something that you created, that, that's your thing, but it's really more, there's something special about the fact when someone else picks you and say, hey, I want you to bring life to my creation. Right. So that was always one of my dreams.
Yeah, they find value in you. Hang on a second. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the September 13th, a Friday the 13th edition, 2013 of the show, and we're talking with Roy Eavins, just talent extraordinaire. If you want to take a look at some of his work, check out his website. It's www.myjbn.com. And just going to the website, he has even cool music that plays out of your browser if you've got your speakers on. All right, so you've got the relaunch coming. You've got, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, that's one of the things. Our site is down right now. So the MyJBN site actually isn't up.
Well, the Jericho Broadcast Network site is up.
Well,
at least.
Oh, you may have a cache.
Let me see here. No, if I had some cash, nope. This site has stepped out for a bit. No, it just went down a little, or maybe it was in cash. If I had any cash at all, I wouldn't be doing this radio show. I'd probably be out on a Friday night. All right, so
but that site will be back up later. It'll be back up later in the week. So, but people can actually, like, if they want to see some of our comic book work, they can actually look up my comic book company on Facebook. And it's under Pyramid Comics, which is, Pyramid, Pyramid, but comics is spelled Comix.
Okay.
and if they, let's see, because we have, I know they can get to the, if I'm not mistaken, I had posted this stories. It looks like they're all set up. Yeah, I did do that. Okay, that was a mistake. But we used to have the issue where people can go to directly to the software that we had that was doing the that allowed them to be able to see the different things. But all of that stuff will be up. But you can see some of our characters that are there, just some of the images that we have under what we were doing. And but yeah, definitely by the end of the week, all of that stuff will be back up and going again. And you know, we're, like I said, we're excited about it. So
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty cool relaunch.
yeah.
Okay, so well, let's talk about that for a little while. Describe a little bit about your creative comic universe. You know, the kinds of characters you have, what your focus is, and where you think the real strengths are in terms of how people are responding to it and are enjoying what it is that you guys create.
Wow. Well, let's start off with this. The easiest way to do that is to actually start off and talk about when we initially got it going. It was a really, really interesting situation for us. Again, we started in 1993. Well, 93 was the first year that we published. We actually started the company, you know, a couple of years before that, but we spent about a year and a half in development of some of the things that we wanted to do. And we actually, at that time, we had copyrights where we, you know, did our copyright of our characters. We had over, 300 characters. That was just series one of our first copyright submission that we did. And we did another series where I think did about another 150 additional characters. And so we had our universe, as we call it, it was actually rather large. We we did a lot of different things, and I mean we had characters from, you know, every ethnic background.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, our primary focus was on African American characters,
right,
and things of that nature. So we did the let's see. Our first book was The Future that we did. That was the title of the book, and The Future was basically a character born on this planet called Mycos. We did one of the things that we actually also did. One of my other majors in college was African American Studies. So we did a lot of things centered around African history.
Okay.
And so we did that, and it was basically based on a planet called Mycos, which was in this universe. The way that this particular universe was set up is that instead of the different ethnic groups being on continents on one particular planet, they all had their own planets that they were from.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is the folks born on Mycos, pretty much everybody who was born in on this planet was born with some particular type of special ability or gift. But the thing is that the people, there was an elite group of people called the Chosen, who were, of course, born with an ability that far exceeded everybody else's, you know, or the regular setup of people. And the Future was actually born as the character that was hailed to be the savior of his people from the great betrayer. And so he's this young kid that's born into this whole thing that just really has a lot of expectations on him. For lack of a better term, he was from a strength or demeanor type. He was sort of a Superman, our Superman of a character, as we put him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we published that first book, it looked like a coloring book. I mean, it was just straight black and white line art. We had gone to the publisher and we were like, hey, we want to do a comic book. What do we need? And so the guy was telling us, and so, of course, when he told us how much it would cost to do the full color thing that we walked into the door wanting to do, as college students, we were like, right, yeah, that's not going to work. And so we went back, and he said, well, if you do this, you can, this is, you'll be able to get it done. So, and that's what we did. We came back with it, and so we were just like, okay, well, here it is, black and white line art. We got him. We put the book out, and it actually was received very, very well. It was interesting because there were some folks that had found us on the what was it called? Because we weren't doing the internet at that point. It was they had the internet, but it was more or less people emailing and doing things of that nature.
Right.
And I guess they had found out because of one of the things that we had done in one of the local comic book stores. And a distributor called us up and said, hey, I was sent one of your issues by a comic book store owner that I know. We thought that your stuff was pretty interesting and wanted to get to know, talk to you guys. So he calls me up and he gets the information. He's like, hey, I love the book and I want to place an order for 2 of my stores that I service. Well, those 2 stores actually happen to be over in the Pacific Rim. And we're talking about, I think one was in China and the other one was in Australia.
Sure.
And so we were like freaking out. We're like, are you serious? And so we sent him over there. The first order that he did a small order. He did like 20 books. We're like, okay, cool. Well, 2 weeks later, we get a call back, and he was like, okay, I'm going to need 300 of each of your books. I was like, you're going to need what?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. He's like, man, you guys did great over there. And that was one of the things that was very surprising because, first off, of course, it's in English.
Right.
And we were like, well, did it get translated or something? And he was like, no, they read the English over there. And so it was great. We did that, and so we got a really good response from that. So that in itself kind of really pushed us to the point where we were just like, wow, this is something that we might have something here. One of the other things that happened after that happened was I'm at home. Well, and this is the time that Milestone Comics come out. I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with Milestone Comics. And what we did was I was like, hey, you know what? Why not? My thing is the worst that anybody, if you ask a question, the worst that anyone could ever say is no. And, I'm like, hey, no never killed anyone. So what I did was I sent some of our information because Milestone had done their deal with DC. I sent some of our information to Marvel. And was like, hey, if they got a deal, you know what, we got some stuff just as good as theirs, or that could be if we had the resources that they did and everything. So let's see what happens. So I sent the information in, and about a month and a half later, I'm sitting at home about 8 o'clock at night, and I get this phone call from some guy, and he's like, yeah, this is Terry Stewart. And I'm like, excuse me? He was like, yeah, I'm Terry Stewart, president of Marvel Comics. And I'm like, really? So, he was like, yeah, I just wanted to talk to you guys because we looked at your stuff and we were really, really impressed. And the ironic thing was, he said, we would love to be able to work with you guys, but we are in the process of changing our 6 top titles. And so we actually found out 6 months before it happened.
Before everybody else.
When they killed off Xavier. and they went through that whole alternate universe thing that if he had never led the X-Men and Magneto had actually taken over and all those kind of things. So he told us, he was like, yeah, we're going to do this, and, it's kind of a big deal for us because it's everything. We're changing everything that we've done, and we're taking a really big risk and yada, yada. But he was like, you guys got some great stuff, keep it up, and, who knows what will happen later and all that kind of stuff. But, it was really cool just to get that phone call, from the president of, one of the largest comic book companies, in the world.
Right,
that
absolutely.
That was like really, really exciting, and it really gave us an energy to move forward with what we did. I actually just posted the links to to where you can actually see our books on the web right now still, even with the site not being up. And you actually can look at the difference in our first two books. When we did The Future, and then we came with our second title, which was called Falcon 6.
Sure.
We went through, and they were both black and white books, but what happened is I happened to be, it was the funniest thing, I was at the printer one day, and we were sitting there, and he had this old black and white TV in their little area. And I thought about it. I said, well, wait a minute. That's the same thing that they're doing for color TV, but it's just coming across black and white. And I was like, is it possible for us to do a grayscale of our book to get it? Because, of course, that puts more depth, because you can still do your colors. And I said, well, how much would that cost? And he's like, well, it'd be the same as what you did before. I was like, really? So, that's, like I said, if you go take a look at the first two issues, it would actually be issue 1 of both The Future and Falcon 6. I mean, it's a huge difference. We paid $300 more, but we paid $300 more because we got 3,000 extra copies of the book. And so, we were like, okay, well, great. We could do this whole grayscale thing. We did a full color. The cover is actually was full color, but the rest of the book, was the grayscale. So it went really well. And, the only thing that kind of changed this is that, of course, life happens and college continues, and, that's just where that goes. So, and that's kind of where it ended up, us tailing off. And we tried to keep it going, but, we came to college. We had to put some of those, as we put them, childish dreams away for a little while to really get back into it. So
that's still that's still more than what they say, more than a modicum of success. I mean, what you did was and I don't want to say like you happened on it, like it was all random, but what you did was you created a creative environment that obviously caught on, and you did it somewhat in a unique way. I mean, obviously you were constrained by finances, but they found out that the constraint of your finances was in no way a limiting factor in how you were received, especially overseas. It wasn't a threshold that was tough to overcome. People liked your stuff anyway. So that's pretty cool, to come, to do that in college. And then, even though things fall by the wayside, I mean, a whole lot of things change when you leave college. I mean, I'm not dating 4 different women a week, okay? So, I mean, stuff happens, but the fact of the matter is you had a taste of it, but it was more than just a taste. There was commercial success.
Right.
And I can't think of anything that's more, more encouraging for someone who wants to go it alone, someone who's got that entrepreneurial spirit. Well, someone like you who was an extrovert with introverted talents to go out and do things. I mean, so you come out of college, and even though things are changing, what did you do right out of school?
Actually, yeah, that's kind of where it went slightly. We took a little time off. I actually got married the year that I came out of college, and at the time. Oh, and speaking of that, before I go on any further, I have to say, my middle daughter, her name is Maisha. Her birthday is today. She turned 17. So I want to say happy birthday to my daughter.
Okay, and she date?
I'm sorry?
Does she date, and does that drive you crazy?
Well, she kind of sort of. My ex just moved to Texas, so she's still kind of getting to know people. I haven't heard of any new boys or any little boys yet, so
okay.
yeah, I'm one of those things. There's this acronym. It's called DAD, DADD, and it stands for Dads Against Daughters Dating. And
yes.
our moniker is shoot the first one, and the rest will find out. So
yeah, well, true. The word does get around.
Yeah. So we do that, and I don't have too many problems. That actually goes into one of the things that I ended up doing with some of our characters and things that I work with. I tell them, I really don't like guns because you can trace bullets. Me, I much rather prefer ice darts and ice arrows because they end up going away. But they
exactly.
It's the same. So.
Well, wish her. I mean, if you happen to speak to her today, wish her a happy birthday from everybody at BSFS, and tell her, be sure to tell her that you talked about her, and that we all wish her a happy birthday.
All right. Well, thank you. But as I was saying, I actually ended up getting married. So I actually started off doing. My family heritage is Jamaican and Bahamian. So it's like
okay.
I came out of school with a whole bunch of different jobs. So right out of college, I was actually working at a group home for boys. I was actually on the air as a morning drive time DJ. I was also a manager / fitness trainer at a local gym. And let's see, what else was I doing at that point? I think those are the three that I had. Those are the three right out of college. About 4 months out of my getting out of school, I actually was offered a job with the Urban League in Tallahassee, so I took that and kind of laid off on a couple of the other things and worked there for a while. That was kind of the thing that pushed me into the more professional, I guess, field, if you would say. But the other thing that job actually did was it gave me the opportunity to go back after my passion and go back for the comic book stuff. And we started working on that again and doing some different things with it. But kind of went that way. And then from there, I've done some different things, but it's mainly been I stayed in the broadcast field. I always continued to do the radio stuff, so that was kind of the main thing. But I also did a lot of the same type of nonprofit work, working for the Urban League and other organizations like that. So,
and currently, when you take a look at the kind of the creative things that you do you have much interaction? Do you do much mentoring for like younger kids who might want to follow in the kind of career paths that you have not only crossed and conquered and done well in, but things that kind of the whole creative genre of producing something in your life? I mean, do you do much community outreach? Do you have time for kids? I mean, what other kinds of things do you do? I mean, you obviously work with the Urban League, so
right. And that actually was something that I really enjoyed because that was always a part of what I did was working with kids and different youth organizations. We actually have a nonprofit division or side of my company that we call JAMS, and it's the JERICHO Arts, Media, and Sports Youth Academy.
Okay.
And that is actually one of our goals is we take young people and we teach them the things that we know. That was one of the things that even with the folks that worked with me that came on board when I started the company and everything, one of the things that I said that we always have to do is I say every 5 years we've got to find us someone who's 21 or under and try to duplicate ourselves. So what does that mean? That means you take them and you give them all of your knowledge, all of your information, everything that you know. You just give it to them and say, hey, now you have that opportunity to go out and do something special. You find people with those passions who are into the similar things that we were into, and that's what we do. So, yeah, any opportunity that we get to work with kids is always something that I look forward to and that we try to do.
Sure. Now, this kind of begs the question. I mean, you're working with kids. Do they know about your work with the comic book? Because that's something that is very accessible to kids, to teenagers, to even preteens, and can kind of put them on a maybe a more creative path if they get into it. I mean, do you have that opportunity?
Yeah, we do. Whenever I go to speak, it always comes up that I actually had a comic book company, and it actually lends itself, because as we go into some of it, our second book, Falcon, for example, Falcon 6, the primary character, one of the two primary characters, is Night. His name is Night Shadow.
Okay.
And actually, on the Black Science Fiction Society page, Night Shadow is I guess that's my avatar, or my profile pic, or whatever it is. Well, he is a black ninja. And, I would go places, and I vividly remember having conversations with, middle school kids, and they were like, "Oh, you can't have a black ninja." They're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "No, yeah, you can." I'm like, "You can be anything you want to." And, it's funny because that's one of the things, especially kids in our community, one of the problems that we run into is the fact that our kids are limited by what images are being provided to them.
Absolutely.
By mainstream media. And so that actually was one of the primary purposes of me starting the JERICHO broadcast networks, was for us to be able to present our images to our kids, so that they could see, you know what, just because you've never seen a black ninja before doesn't mean that there can't be one. Or that there hasn't been one. You be that first one. You come in and do whatever it is and whatever it takes. And so, that's part of it. We love doing that. So, yeah, those opportunities to give kids the inspiration to say, wow, you know what, if this guy can do it, hey, I can do it. And that's what I tell them. I said, listen, I'm nobody special. I'm just somebody who believed that what I did was good enough for somebody else to take into consideration.
Right, and plus, once they start doing things and they get some positive feedback from like a mentor like you or somebody like that, it makes all the difference in the world, because, not only do they not see those kinds of, like a black ninja, not only do they not see those kinds of images or not see, get the kind of encouragement, mainstream encouragement ideas like that, they get, to have you, somebody who's successful at it, show them that not only can it be done, but you could do it yourself. That's got to be pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun when when we hear these kids and they see that, or you come back a couple of months or a couple of years later and they're like, hey, I decided to do this and I tried it. As I tell them, I say, the issue is always just trying something. You never know what's going to happen. Never be afraid to try something. And, it may not turn out exactly like you want it, but that's what life is about. It's always, trying new things and keeping it going.
And you know what, we do, as I think as a society, greater American society and even black culture, we do suffer from, kind of a paucity of can-do spirit, because so much of life these days is people saying no, or people giving you an excuse why it can't happen, or things like that. And that's something that we all have to actively kind of work past and show people that this is not necessarily the way, just because you don't think it can happen, or just because one person said no, doesn't mean that your dream or your idea doesn't have merit. I mean, look what they did. They made some turtles into ninjas. What the heck is that?
Right.
And look how successful that was, So, I think that's great that you do that kind of outreach, because it's so important, and it's more than just sitting back like in an office or sitting at your home providing images of, that are non-standard, that are, non-white images doing things that you wouldn't imagine them to do or whatever. It's the fact that you go and you actually touch these kids, not in a bad way, but you touch their imaginations and kind of show them exactly what you said. You give them that encouragement. You say, hey, look, you thought of it. It was a great idea. Put it together. Let's see what happens. And I think that's great. Do you have any outreach for, like, in the radio venue for them? I know probably, obviously, video lends itself very well to conveying ideas to the young, but are you doing anything along the lines of the radio, or had you done anything in the past that would be encouraging to younger kids or young, just the younger generation?
Well, that's actually another part of the JAMS program. Like I said, it's arts, media, and sports. So
okay,
we focus on when we get these kids in our either the summer. We've done summer programs, we've done after school programs. We actually almost started our own charter school that focuses on those areas. So we actually teach them when they were coming into our program, we were giving them all of it. If you came into the program, you had to be involved in every aspect of it. So it's the arts, the media side, as well as the sports. But what we did is we found out what their passions were, what they were most interested in, and then we would concentrate them on that. But no, we helped them develop their own television shows, their own radio programs. We actually put together a print publication for a group of kids. So, yeah, we definitely try to do it through all of the areas.
That's great. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the September 13th, 2013 edition. Oh, double 13 whammy today for Friday the 13th. And our special guest is Roy Eavins, entrepreneur, radio god, voice. Well, you're now a voice deity, where someone else has actually wanted to get your voice in their work. And, comic book creator and writer. So let's turn the clock ahead maybe 5 years. You've got all of these things happening. You've got the new rollout of your broadcast empire coming in a very short amount of time. Let's skip down the road a few years. Where do you think all of this is going to take you, or what do you see as maybe your 5-year plan?
Oh, wow. Well, personally, my 5-year plan is that the JERICHO Broadcast Networks is one of the top 3 black media entities in this country. At that point, or by that point, we're hoping to at least be able to be moving into the fancy corporate headquarters that I want to have by that time. My goal is for my company to realistically become one of the top media companies, period, in the nation. My thing is I believe that if we can do that, focusing on the African American market, and just putting out the diaspora of our images, and not just one side of it or one area, just everything that there is to know about us. And there's so much that we can do that's positive, that's not being put out there, and that's one of the goals. That's one of the primary goals of what we have. So, just being a force in this country as it relates to the growth of the black community. That's really where I'm looking at in 5 years. Being able to be an extremely well versed and well thought of organization. Our tagline for JERICHO is that we are the future of urban media.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because, obviously, I would say catering to the black community is one thing. Have you given thought, and do you have aspirations for more mass market appeal? And I'm not just saying white, because, obviously your initial comic book was thought quite well of over in the Asian, Asian countries. Do you look at as filling a black niche, or are you starting out here with an eventual plan to branch out into more mass market appeal?
Well, here's what we found is a reality of the situation. I have another project that I didn't really talk about. It's a magazine that I published. It was a men's magazine called Today's Renaissance Man.
Okay.
And that magazine, the tagline for that magazine is that we were the magazine for today's progressive African-American man at the time. And what I realized was that when we put that magazine out, which actually got picked up by Barnes & Noble and Borders, was carried in their stores. We were actually carried by the third largest bookstore chain out on the West Coast as well. And as we started getting our subscriptions in, one of the things that I started noticing was that the majority of our subscribers were actually Caucasian men. And it was really, really interesting because of what it did was it kind of set the groundwork for where we would end up going even with the broadcast company. What I believe and what I found to be a truth is that when people of other cultures see intelligent black conversation or black dialogue or black commentary, they are willing to listen to it. So the appeal is going to be there. You know, the appeal is there, and we don't have to, you know, I don't think that us changing our focus from the African-American community is going to diminish our ability to reach a broader market of people.
Sure.
And so that's what our goal is. The goal is just to continue to be true to what we want to do, and in that sense, make us the voice that people come to when they realistically want to hear things about the black community and what's going on in the black community, or getting multiple and varying legible opinions or legible conversations from black people to see what is actually going on. And so, yeah, no, we're going to, that's going to remain our focus. But my belief is that good conversation and that good, intelligent dialogue that we will create will have a cross-market appeal.
Well, I mean, if we were to be brutally honest, urban culture pretty much rules, in terms of current culture, rules the world. I mean, there's no doubt that when you go to other countries, even, you know, let's take an example that most people wouldn't even think of. When you go to Iran, you know, the music that's played in the street, the music that people like, is from the hip hop environment, from that genre, and so for you to have found that, you know, your readership was not what you expected, actually falls in line with exactly how culture has permeated, and urban culture has permeated, you know, the world's, I don't even know how you characterize it. You know, would you talk about it? You know, remember when they used to call world culture, and that would be, you know, like certain world music. You know, nowadays, basically, urban culture seems to be dominating just about every possible venue that you can find. So, no, I wasn't saying that you would have to change your focus, but what I was asking was, you know, the provision for it is obviously there, since, you know, there's going to be de facto sales, de facto attention, excuse me, you know, money paid to or for your products. I think that obviously the best thing that anybody can do as a content creator is to create something that has such mass market appeal. And you guys have got a leg up on it. And I think that, you know, it sounds very much like your relaunching of your media empire is something that it's obviously going to garner some attention, and it'll be interesting to watch what happens over the next year or so to see just what kind of traction it gets. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, in not just in your, you know, dreams of all dreams, where do you think things are going to go? You know, let's say by the end of the year, once you do the relaunch. How popular were you before, and do you think that's going to carry over?
Yeah, we actually are really excited about it. You know, technically my network has been down for about 4 years.
Okay.
We always kept one of the radio stations running, and I have always done at least one live show. Even when we weren't doing the sports, I came up with another talk show, which is called Urban America Today. And we, you know, it's kind of a mix between a Good Morning America style show and a late show. But of course, from an urban perspective.
Right.
And actually, you can find that on YouTube as well. And I can give my YouTube thing out, but you know, we've constantly, and I continually get emails from people saying, "Hey, are you guys coming back? Are you guys going to be doing more of this? You're going to be doing more of that." So, you know, I tell people one of the things when we launched the official broadcast, we launched our first radio station in 2000. In 2002 or 2003, I'm sorry, we launched 4 other radio stations.
Okay.
We were having an average of about 650 to 700 people per day tune in to each of our radio stations. Along with that, our average listener was on the station for an hour and a half.
Wow.
So we're talking, like I said, 2004, 2005, pre-social media, the dominance of social media. We were able to create those kinds of numbers. And then when we launched our television broadcast in 2005 with our sports stuff, we were averaging about 650 to 700 people live. And then between Sunday and Thursday, we were having about 1,500 to 2,500 people come back and watch replays of the game.
Wow.
And again, that was done first off with no advertising.
Sure.
And, you know, it was really just email stuff. We were on a couple of group sites, but that was pretty much it. So now that the social media thing has taken off the way it has, you know, I have a huge expectation that we are going to really be able to make an impact and pull the numbers really high up. So.
And pretty quickly, too.
Yeah.
Are you hiring? Never mind. I'll talk to you about that later. Well, let's talk about you mentioned the radio thing. The radio thing's probably going to take off well. Talk a little bit about what you're going to do in terms of video, you know, the kinds of shows that you're thinking about putting together.
Wow, we're going to do everything. You know, we're getting back to that again. We have talk shows. We are in development of our own series. We're also looking for and taking opportunities from other people, you know, to bring their programs on and get involved. Let's see. I spoke about Urban America today.
Yes.
You can actually, we have a Facebook page for the Atlanta version of that show. It's called Urban America Today, Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, folks can search us on Facebook there. Or they can go to our YouTube page, which is, our YouTube is MyJBN Online. So we've got a bunch of our old things there and some new things that we're going to be getting into as well. And,
sure.
You know, that'll do it. But we're going to be doing everything. We actually have the network cordoned off into 4 different areas. We do what we call our general urban. Then we have our faith-based. Then we have what we're going to do as our talk network, and then sports.
Okay.
At the initial onset of the relaunch, the sports and the talk are actually going to be together. But the goal is that by the end of the year, both the radio and television networks will be separate in those instances. So they will be one specifically for sports and one specifically for talk. And in that talk network, you know, it'll be anything, any and everything. We've got financial experts that we're bringing on. We've got people who, you know, are political folks that we're going to be bringing on to do different shows and everything. We're, you know, our goal is, it's one of them is a news. The talk network is really a news network is what we're focusing it as.
Right.
And so, you know, we're going into everything because that's, in my opinion, that's the reality of it. You know, just like with the Black Science Fiction Society, we are, as Black people, we're in everything. What's been the issue is that we have not gotten the exposure in everything that we're involved in. And
right.
That was one of the other goals of the JERICHO Broadcast Networks when I launched the company, is that we wanted to be that corporate structure to help people who had a bigger vision but may not have actually, you know, understood what it took to get there or what it what they needed to have in place to do that.
Or had the resources. I mean,
right.
A lot of people, especially creatives, don't necessarily have the same kind of business acumen that somebody with your experience has. So being
right.
able to provide that framework and give some mentoring in that area has got to, I mean, that's a great resource in and about itself,
Right.
Wow. Now I'm thinking about, do I leave Chicago? Do I not leave Chicago?
No, don't leave Chicago, actually. We, my network, ironically, the way that we're set up is that we want people to be affiliates in their local markets. We're actually looking, that's one of the things that we're going to be promoting, is that we're looking for people to be local affiliates in major cities especially. And we actually had a group out of Chicago back in the early part of the network where we were doing I did a weekly live show from 2002 to 2005 with a group out of Chicago on our radio station. So we were, and I was in Orlando, and they were in Chicago, and like I said, we've been doing a lot of the broadcast stuff that you see people doing, like what they do with the talk show now. Of course, you got the blog talk. We were doing a lot of this stuff pre all of these companies coming out. So, our system is there. Ready to go.
I'll have to check my contract in any case before I can even talk to you. So we'll have to talk about that later. But how are you going to be marketing? The fact that not only are you on the air, but trying to develop new talent. How do you get the word out? What do you think is going to be the easiest and the best way for you to do that? I mean, obviously there's social networking, but the circle for social networking is a lot smaller than the possible pool that you could get for talent. Do you have a marketing plan already set up and ready to go?
We do, but actually what I've realized is, and this is, I think that's one of the misconceptions that we have out there, is that pool of talent is smaller, because most of the people, especially in the communications and broadcast industry, they've started to realize that, I've got to be out there and be visible if I want to get work down, and that's really one of the things that are coming in. So our primary focus is going to be doing it via social media. It's going to be doing it, through organizations and groups like the Black Science Fiction Society. We want to find those people. Like I said, when I first found out, Arthur Dawson, who's a friend of mine from Orlando, was the person that told me about your group, about the group initially. And the first thing I saw when I saw this group, and I kind of went through some of the things and was checking out some of the different folks, is that I'm like, oh my God, here's my Saturday morning lineup that I've been wanting to do. That was the first thing that came to my mind. It was just like, and again, it's sort of like when we were trying to find out if people wanted the HBCU sports information. It's like I always knew there were more people out there who were interested in it than what I was seeing in my limited access to the people that were in my immediate circle.
Right.
And so, I think that's one of the things that we're going to be able to do, because, like I said, we're willing to help, and we want to get folks in, and we, as you talked about, we're going to do some of the resources to help them get it going, and until we can get to the point where we can, have our own animation studio, and we're able to say, okay, hey, now it's time for us to do full-blown animation of your project, but we're going to start off now just being able to get it out there. And, what that does is that's going to open it up, because the other part of it is that's what will happen, is that we're going to open their books up to a group of people that they really probably would have had no access to otherwise. That's been one of our advantages.
Yeah, and it's an underserved talent pool.
Right.
Because of culture, because of resources, because of frankly, because of money, but to be able to create an entire network that can overcome some of those built-in slights and deficiencies, is only going to make you grow. And the other thing that I think is very well to your benefit is that you are early adopters of emerging technologies. And obviously not enough can be said about that, because the early adopters, sometimes the first one in is the furthest one to go, merely because they're doing something new, they're doing something innovative, and they're doing something buzzworthy. So this all speaks well. I mean, to put together your network like that, there are other people talking about putting together networks. There are people who say, oh, I've got a YouTube channel. But to actually put together your own content, control its distribution, and things like that is an idea that hasn't quite caught on with the larger internet public yet.
Right. And I tell people it's like the funniest thing about that to me is the fact that that is actually what we have always been set up to do. That was
right.
always our purpose and our desire, was to do that. And we've actually been doing network stuff in a way that most people are not doing it. And it was always funny to me because I would hear people say, oh, I've got a network. And, well, okay, no, you've actually got a show. So you don't have a network. You got a show. And I would tell them, like, listen, I'm not trying to be funny, but a show is different from a network.
Right.
And I tell people one of the things that they don't realize in the way that this actually works is that major advertisers normally buy networks. They don't buy shows. That's why you see, I tell them, I say, now shows will help build and brand the network, but it's still the overall network, because what they realize is that they will have the ability to reach a vast amount of people. And the thing is this is one of the keys, and this has always been one of our key marketing strategies and one of the ways that we've been able to be successful. Again, our primary product was the Black College Sports.
Right.
And we basically went in before anybody was broadcasting HBCU games. You had a few smaller radio stations that were still doing it for the black communities where they had the larger alumni bases and things of that nature. But we were really the ones to start doing it on a national level. So any particular week, we were going to be at a stadium where we were in front of, say, 15 to 70,000 black people, just based on what game we were going to at that point.
Right.
And so what we're now doing, though, is we're out there and we're like, hey, we're doing this game. Yeah, call your friends up, tell them they can get online, they can watch the football game now, they can check us out. I said, but while we're doing that live game, we're running commercials for our gospel radio station, our urban radio station. At the time, we had a hip-hop radio station, our talk radio station. So now, whatever it is that you're really interested in, you now have the ability to say, wait a minute, there's a black company that's actually doing this, and I can get this anywhere? Yes. So now you're able to push it to people in a different manner, so they get what they wanted. One of the things, and just to kind of give you the reason that we started the whole diversity of the network, was when we first started, we started off with just B108, The Vibe. The Vibe, that was the name of our radio station properties.
Sure.
And so what we would do is we did what you've been in the radio business, we did day parts.
Okay.
Well, from 6 to 10, we ran gospel music. We picked all of the genres that were popular to the black community.
Right.
So we start off in the morning, 6 to 10 we did gospel. Then 10 to 2 we were doing your urban adult contemporary, so, and then the later you got, which was the music with no hip-hop, no rap, none of that stuff, just regular music. And then as the day got later, we started off, we played more hip-hop the younger the station got.
Right.
Well, again, in our research, what I found out was that our gospel people were turning the station off at 10 o'clock because they didn't, there was a particular set of people who, they didn't want to listen to anything but gospel music. So they were like, I got to find me something else now. By the same token, I had another group of people that wouldn't turn the radio or wouldn't turn the station on until 10 o'clock because, you know what, okay, yeah, church and all that is good, but I don't want to listen to gospel music in the morning. I need something a little bit more to get me hyped up and get me moving for the morning. So they wouldn't turn on until we got to the regular urban music. So that
Sure.
was actually the reason that I was like, well, wait a minute. I got one station. All I need is a couple of more computers, and I can do more. And so that's what we did. So we said, okay, well, let's check it out and let's give it a shot. And we opened up the stations, and, I mean, it caught on like wildfire when we did it. And I was just really shocked at how much it was. But those particular genres, so we figured out what those genres were, and that's what set the restructuring when I lost everything. I actually lost everything in '08 and basically just took some time off. And I said, okay, well, let me restructure and let me look at it. And so I looked at what were the most popular aspects of what we did.
Sure.
And that's where we refocused to just the 4 areas for both radio and television, which again are the urban, the faith-based, the talk/news, and sports. So those were the areas which, ironically, if you look at regular media, those are always the strongest areas of just general media. So, you know, we were just like, hey, there it is. And you give those groups of people what it is that they're looking for, and then you just focus on them in different areas. So that's the goal. And actually, I'm excited about it. As we start pulling the teams together, we're going to be really looking forward to getting it going.
Well, and what you found out was, it's not just niche marketing. What it is, like I said earlier, you guys discovered early on how to fill a need and fill it well, and fill it in a way that people obviously glommed onto you, and really, I mean, I'm sure you're talking about reoccurring visitors. We're not talking about, somebody drops in one time and doesn't come back for 6 months. It sounds like people were parked on the station and really were getting into what it was that they wanted to listen to. And so this sounds like your relaunching strategy. I mean, I can't see any flaws in it at all. I think you're going to do well.
We're praying and hoping so. But that was one of the things. We had a very, very loyal following of people. And that was one of the things that really helped us as we moved forward with everything. And like I said, even though we've been gone, we still get the emails from people asking, are we coming back? With all of the different programming. So we're, like I said, once it took me a couple of years just to get a group of people here in the Atlanta area that I can work with and that we're really serious about trying to make some things happen. And
sure.
So, like I said, now we're looking for those people in other areas as well, and people who will get an opportunity to basically start. It's almost like starting their own franchise in their cities. We're going to provide the content. We're going to get you all that stuff, and we just need people in those particular markets to go push us on the local level. One of the things that I've always said about the network and that I've always wanted to do is to build this network while helping to build other black businesses. So, our advertising packages are very affordable. We work with folks to get them out there and get them going. But we put them in front of people, and we give them those opportunities to make sales, to generate revenue. So.
Well, and we all know that content is king. I mean, people who are in the radio business, the media business, even especially computerized media, we're talking, the truism of the entire industry is content is king. And if you can provide people with interesting content in the areas that they're interested in, you're going to develop a following. I mean, look what you've got so far. I can only imagine what kind of excitement is building right now, knowing that you guys are going to relaunch. So this all bodes well. Now, will you carry other content creators' content, like syndicated, like for television, syndicated shows? If somebody else has a show, but has content that looks to be attractive for your audience, will you carry other people's shows, or are you going to maintain kind of a very, I would say, a strict hold on exactly where the content comes from, who provides it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
No, we will be open to bringing different things in. People, just like any business, one of the things that we'll also do is we'll sell time.
Sure.
to people that want to get involved in the network. But what we do is if we find situations where we look at it and we say, hey, this is something that looks good, we may say, well, we'd like to become a partner with you in this from the network perspective, where we then start to put resources into their project and say, okay, now let's help you grow it and build it as a part of the network. But again, if not, we don't do a lot of the different things because, like, I know one of the challenges that we're going to have is probably going to be, and I've already, being a media consultant, I've kind of already gotten prepared for it. But we're doing a faith-based network.
Okay.
And with that being said, there's a reason that it is not called a Christian network, because it will be open to other faiths. There are different faiths, and just to use the primary one is of course there's the Muslim faith and everything. So people will have that opportunity to be a part of that network, to put their programming on there.
Right.
Now, we of course will have our limits. We're not going to do any group that's satanic or.
Well, I was going to say that whole worship thing, can be a little dodgy as far as getting sponsors and stuff like that.
Right. So
coming up, hey, we will be sacrificing 2 goats today in honor of. That just doesn't.
None of that. None of that kind of stuff. But just those things. If someone, because and the funny thing is I have friends. I have a lot of friends, especially because of the work that the community-based work that I do. I, of course, have a large number of Muslim friends who are in the Nation of Islam and do different things of that nature. I also have a large group of friends that was one of the surprising things who are now Buddhists, who, from college, who, become, that's their regular religion of choice and things of that nature. And so I'm not going to tell one of them, no, you can't do a show on, talking about your faith, because that's what it is. But like I said, I'm not looking for anything that focuses on no faith-based things from an evil perspective, I guess is how we would look at it.
Yeah, you're going to have to use judgment, and let's be honest, no qualifying or disqualifying label is going to cover everything. Management reserves the right to, and then fill in the blank. But
exactly.
which makes all the sense in the world. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, and it is a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. Check us out. The show is broadcast live every Friday, starting at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and then, like I say, all for everybody else around the world, follow it around to your time zone. Tonight's guest is Roy Eavins, and who is putting together quite the media. I don't want to call it anything grandiose or anything like that, but what you're doing is, it's not so much grandiose, but what you're doing is you're providing a media environment for an underserved audience, I think. And you're doing it in a technologically smart and forward-thinking way. So this is pretty exciting as even I hear about it. The people that you're working with, how do you find like-minded people? Are these people you randomly run into? Do people contact you? And if people who are listening to the show and pick it up as a podcast later are interested in maybe approaching you, what kind of reception would they get? Do you have any limits? Obviously, none of the Satanistic kind of stuff or anything like that for your faith-based channel. But, in terms of content, I'm sure you're probably looking for anything that you can get a hold of that's good. Is that correct?
It absolutely is. That's, like I said, that's one of the issues that we're looking at, is that there is, for a long time, being someone who's been involved in the media and who's worked in the media and the broadcast industry for as long as I have, one of the things that I noticed, and this is actually something that I kind of realized in college, is that we've always been giving, the black community has always been giving what I call 2 opposing views. And we're always being forced by the general media into one of those two particular groups. And I think that's a problem because just like any other ethnic group, we all have varying opinions and views on everything. So, why not let our network say that? Why do we always have to say it's either A or B? Okay, there's 24 of the letters in the alphabet. Why does it have to be one of those two? I don't think like that, necessarily. I have friends my age who don't have kids yet. So there is a very distinct difference in my thought process and my friend's thought process. I've got a 45-year-old friend who will date a 25 to 27-year-old girl. Well, I have a 25-year-old daughter. It's not happening for me.
Yeah.
So,
and we're not, this thin line, top dead center, homogenized group. I mean, we are just as well. Someone posted here, we are not monolithic, and that's true.
Exactly.
We have just as much, as many differing perspectives as anybody. And I think if you go to the barber shop, your traditional barber shop, you're going to hear a whole lot of things that you're not going to agree with, and you're going to hear some that you do, because, I mean, that's just the nature of people. And I think that one of the mistakes that media has made, and it was pretty evident, like during the Cosby years, media has made the mistake of believing that we are a thing, one thing. There's only one thing. There's only one homogeneous blackness. And, the fact that you're addressing that misconception is great. I mean, look at all the people. I mentioned this a couple times. Look at all the people who complain about the fact that, on the Cosby Show, you had a black doctor marrying a black lawyer who had children who had what were considered white problems, and that's just not so. It's just, you can't stratify people like that because it just doesn't work. It's just not realistic. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, well, and that's always been the one of the primary focuses and goals that we've had, is to make sure that people understand that we are not just this one thing. I think one of the other problems that we've run into as a culture is that everyone else has been dictating to us who we are. They've been dictating our culture. They've been dictating our history. And, we, again, have to take ownership and start telling our own stories again. We've got to be the group of people that tells the stories, because history, as a student of history, what you find in history is that whoever the conquering group is, or whoever becomes the dominant group or culture in any geographical area, they always rewrite the history to their benefit.
Right.
And, I mean, we can look at the way that the prime example, I mean, we as black people, of course, have the example of what happened in Africa, just as the Native Americans or the indigenous, Americans that were already here. I guarantee you, if you go to a history school or history class in a regular school and then go to one on a reservation, well, that story is going to be told a whole different way about the building of America. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, and while parts of both versions may be true, the reality is that we know, again, how do you discover something that has a group of people here already? Right. You didn't discover anything. You ran into somebody's house and said, "Hey, I got a new house," and they're like, "Hello, Billy Bob, what you doing?" So you use your force to take it over. And again, we've had the same thing in Africa. When we talk about, one of the things that, as I mentioned, one of my majors in college was African American Studies, and we had some very, very prominent African American Studies professors at Florida A&M while I was there. And I will never forget the first time I was given information about Kemet and some of the things that had been altered and that we look at from a historical standpoint that really make a difference. And one of the things that I noticed, or that was very, very interesting to me, because it was something that was just a general situation of how maps are made. I found out that the African version of the map, or the native version of the map of Africa, from a directional standpoint, was actually flipped. If I'm not mistaken, they said the Nile River is the only river that is known to run from south to north. And it was a very interesting situation because it does flow. It flows back towards the top, so to speak, of the continent. And they talked about he talked about how all of these things were done when the Europeans came in and they, you know, did whatever it was, convinced different people and took over and, you know, just changed our society, and they changed all the history. You talk about the things with Alexander the Great, how he went, excuse me, and, you know, destroyed the libraries that were in Egypt and took all those books and then, you know, gave credit to all the European scholars or different people to say that they wrote these books, when the African culture predates all of them by thousands of years,
Sure.
you know, to where they were. And it was one of the things that I found to be extremely interesting was, I believe it happened either last year or it was 2011, when the Asian scientist, there's an Asian geneticist, and he was on a mission. He had been going for 7 years trying to prove that the Asian DNA genome, or however he said, was the oldest one. And he says as he went through it, because it made big news. It was only in the news cycle for like 2 days, but, you know, so sure they didn't want it being harped on. But he came back and said, he was like, we have found again that the Asian genome is a derivative of the African genome. So stating again that the African continent and culture was the first one, you know, to be here and to go around.
Well,
and so, you know, that's one of those things, though. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, and that's true because, I mean, let's be honest. All human culture originated on the African continent, and then, you know, you have people in this country in the 21st century. You have conservative whites in the South trying to write slavery out of the history books. You know, and you know, don't get me started on those people. But yeah, it's good. Here's the thing. One of the best parts about what you're doing with your network is the fact that technology is a great leveler. You know, the analog is self-publishing in the publishing field. You know, instead of having to go begging to the top 5 or 6 publishers in the country to try to get your book published, you know, if you want to, you can go ahead and self-publish and get your word out. Putting together your network at this point is brilliant, and it's something that's going to have a tremendous effect on, I would even say, mass media, because as we discussed, you know, urban culture skews all the other culture out there at this point. But being able to put your network together now and being able to put it together with the aid of current technology, what you've done is you have sidestepped the usual gatekeepers, you know, network television, cable television, even UHF way back when, and you're going to be able to present a product that goes directly to your audience. This cannot be at all, you know, minimized. This cannot be discounted at all, and this is huge. This is huge. So getting in essentially on, and you know, people talk, oh, so-and-so's got a YouTube channel, this, that, or the other thing. Now, essentially, you're getting in on the ground floor of something that's going to be pretty remarkable and something that's going to be, eventually there will be no dish TV, there will be no cable TV because everything's going to be digitized. It's cheaper. It's easier. It costs people less in technology. And this is brilliant, Roy. This is just brilliant.
Well, I'll tell you something funny. I heard a term that you said. I'll never forget it. Me and my VP, his name is Brian Fulford, best friend. He's been with me since the beginning of the company. We were coming back. When we were in Orlando. It had to be 99, 2000. And we were coming back from shooting and streaming a Pro-Am basketball game via the Internet. And we were driving back to Orlando from Tampa. It's only an hour drive. But I said something. I said, dude, you know what? This Internet thing is going to be the great equalizer. And that's the term. That is the exact term that I use. And I started thinking about it. I said, we got to 2004, and I was sitting in my office one day, and I was like, okay, I've got 5 radio stations, and I'm about to launch a television station, 24 hours a day. I'm like, there's absolutely no way any other broadcast medium that I would even be able to afford to think about doing it, as opposed to being on the Internet, though. The Internet gave me that ability technology gave me that ability to be able to do what Cox and Clear Channel do on a daily basis. And so, the key now is what we've been trying to do, which is really the hardest part of it, is to convince enough people and to get enough people involved in the process. So.
Well, I think, not that this one show is going to create a cascade of talent knocking at your door, but the fact of the matter is, as well as I do, that there is a cumulative effect. And the fact that you're going to have your stations out there, you've already got a built-in audience that's going to flock back to you, not to you, but back to you, after your hiatus. This is the business model of the future, and a lot of people, some people understand that. You've got your big-time media ISPs, AT&T, Verizon. All of these people know that this is the next thing. Okay, the other phrase, "content is king," is exactly where it's at. If you have content, people will come. And if people will come, then you will get advertisers. And if you get advertisers, you're going to be able to reap financial rewards. And a lot of people out there want to do what you're doing, but they don't have the content. They're flailing around. They're worrying about business models that are not sustainable. They're worried about trying to obtain talent that's not sustainable. Look at the music industry. Look at the movie industry. These are two industries that have reduced themselves to suing their customers because their content is digital and it's so easily transportable. That's not a sustainable business model. But providing your own content and providing your own content in such different areas, this is a no-brainer, Roy. This is, like I said, this is brilliant. This is going to work well. You're going to do well. I don't think anybody has to worry about that. And as long as you can sustain the content, and as long as, egos don't fly out of control, as long as nobody gets into a big pissing contest about content, your business model is not only sound, but it is the business model for the foreseeable future, because the Internet is, as far as content delivery, is where it's going to be. It costs too much to deliver cable. It costs too much to lift a satellite into orbit. This is it. And, hopefully the thing that I hope, technologically speaking, that does come along is eventually broadband is going to become as inexpensive and as fast as it is in all of these other countries. We are so, as the saying goes, sucking hind tet as far as broadband is concerned. So the next big thing, I'm going to let you know what it is. I'm going to give it to you for free. Are you ready for the $100 billion idea, Roy?
What's that?
The $100 billion idea is directly delivering content to smartphones and tablets. That is the next $100 billion idea, because that is going to be the next gateway, and it essentially it is now. We're just about at that point now, where that is the informational gateway and the content gateway for the vast majority of the people out there. So
Right.
you're at the cutting edge of that now. What's going to happen now is anything that you produce obviously is transportable to these other, to smartphones and other digital devices. So again, brilliant, dude, brilliant.
Well,
As soon as you're ready to go public, I deserve some inside information. All right, you just remember that.
I will. And one of the funny things, ironically, about that is that was one of the things that people thought I was crazy with when I first started this, when we were doing the Black College Sports Show in '98. And like I said, I do a lot of research before I jump into anything, and I was looking into it and was seeing where the government was going and how they were moving in. And I was telling people in, '98, '99, 2000, I was like, dude, another 15 to 20 years, you're going to be doing this stuff on your cell phones, and people are looking at me like I'm crazy because, at the time, they had just came out with the first flip phones.
Right.
So people were like, okay, yeah, right, okay, yeah, watching TV on my cell phone. So I'm like, the government has already been doing this stuff, and so we look into it, and I tell people one of the other issues that we run into here in the States is the fact that we are a consumer-based society. Everything has a price. Well, that's one of the issues, because if you go to most countries, they don't pay for Wi-Fi. It's free everywhere you go anyway.
Right.
And we are so far back as far as even what we're doing from a computer standpoint, because people have started doing the external terabyte drives here, the past 2 years maybe, where we've started getting into the whole terabyte as far as our thing. Well, they've been using terabytes in Europe for the past 7-8 years. They've already had that high speed delivery of high bandwidth content in those areas. And it was funny because even back then with our company, we had a huge following of people over in Europe.
Right.
Which was another thing that just really blew me away. I'll never forget the first time I got an email. When we first started the radio station, I had this group of, I think it was a group of about 12 people who I knew they were in different cities, but I thought they were like just all here in the U.S. But they were just like, oh my goodness, they were loyal. They were on the air with me all the time. It's like whenever I got on, somebody from the group was there. At least 3 or 4 of them were on at all times or whatever. And so one day I was on the air. I actually came on late one night just because I was bored and wanted to get on the air. And I got a message from one of the guys. He was saying, I'll never forget the girl's name. One of the girls who was in the group, her name was Mary. And he was like, hey, man, I want you to send a shout-out to Mary because she's not feeling well. He's like, but, she's with our crew. She listens in and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, where is she? And he was like, yeah, I was surprised that you were on because it was so, it's so late here where you are. And so I'm thinking he's in New York. He was in New York when he and I were talking. So I'm like, okay, he's Eastern time zone. He's like, yeah, she's over in London. I was like, she's where? and mind you, this is 2002 that this happened.
Right.
He was like, yeah, you didn't. He was like, no, you need to understand something. He was like, there are only 4 of us who are in the U.S. who are in this group. They were all private contractors. They were computer programmers. They worked with this one company, but they worked in different places. There were 4 of them who were based in the U.S. There were 2 of them in Canada, and the other 6 were over in Europe, Italy, and I forget where the other person, there was Germany. There was a person in Germany. And that was, I will never forget that day because at that moment is when it clicked for me that this was bigger than just national, because that was, the national perception had always been my goal. It was like, we can make a serious impact on the African American community here in the U.S. We can give them a national media organization that can disseminate information important in Chicago into L.A. at the same time, not having to wait the next morning for Tom Joyner to come on the radio, if something important happens. And that's when it changed for me. At that moment, I was just like, okay, this has to be different. I've got to do more than what we've been doing. So it was interesting.
It's good. Like I said, you're an early adopter and you understand the technology. Push technology for getting content to people is huge. I mean, because obviously there's a ton of money in advertising. I'll give you an example. Sprint, the telephone company, has allocated $1.2 billion to build their own marketing company, because Sprint is going to do more than just provide you with phone service. They're going to provide you with content, and that's where the money is. And you're in on the ground floor as far as creating and disseminating content. And this is a good lesson for everybody who's listening. You know, no matter what genre, no matter what kind of media you're into, the fact of the matter is, if you're doing this in an attempt to make a living off of it, then you're going to have to realize that the biggest hurdle to you making your dream come true is figuring out how to get people to find you. You know, that's the biggest hurdle, because once they find you, if you have something to offer, they're going to follow you around, just like they have done with you, Roy. You know, you've got all these people waiting for your radio shows to resume. Same thing for content, same thing for video, for comics, for anything that you can think of that's created creatively. That is that's content. That's this is the deal, and people have to pay attention to this. And those people go, well, you know, I'm not so interested in the whole business side. I just want to create my stuff. You know, I do it for myself. Then write a diary and quit bothering us. I don't want to hear about you anymore if you're just doing it for yourself. The fact of the matter is, if you have a great idea, if you've got something entertaining, you do want other people to get into it. And you know, I'm going to be very interested to watch exactly how things happen with you, because it's going to be interesting, because this is the next step. You know, digital content is where it's at. The moment you digitize something, it becomes infinitely portable. You know, and that was where the movie industry went wrong. That's where the music industry went wrong. You know who screwed the music industry? Apple. Okay? The iTunes store screwed the music industry, because what it did was, you know, Apple, with its marketing muscle, forced everyone to have to digitize their music. Well, once your music's digitized, you know, one sale can be shared among, you know, 1,000 people. What you're doing overcomes that built-in problem with delivering digital content. Yours is original content. And then once you broadcast, if somebody decides to take your shows and rebroadcast them, they're doing you a favor. They're not hurting you at all, because if you got sponsorships, things like that, everybody ends up happy. So, Roy, this is great, man. I mean, I've had a great time listening to all of the things that you did. The fact that you're an early adopter is a testament to the fact that you are careful with how you build your business models, and people can take a good lesson from that. Is there anything that you would give people as an advice on, I mean, what's the one thing, we only have a few minutes here, what's the one thing you would tell somebody who says, you know, Roy, I want to do what you do. What's the one thing you would tell them to avoid at all costs? Where do you think your biggest mistake might have been made, or what was the biggest problem that you ran into putting all of this together?
You know, the unfortunate thing is that I think it's an issue that is very difficult to avoid. My biggest issue has always been the finances
Sure.
of what we were doing. You know, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but when I finally, after 7-8 years of hard work and building, I was at a point where I was prepared to make. I had signed several contracts that over the course of, they were 3-year deals, that over the course of those 3-year deals were probably, they were going to net us a bare minimum of about $600,000. That, of course, would have really allowed us to be able to do a lot of things and move it forward. Because the upside of it is that we were anticipating, or we had anticipated that we would generate somewhere close to $1.5 million to $2 million. revenue over that time frame. So the finances is always the biggest problem that you can have. Now, again, it's a great equalizer, so you can do certain things, but a lot of people aren't interested in building. A lot of us aren't interested in building. Let me put it that way. And
yeah,
that's
you're right.
one of the things that people have to be willing to do with what we're doing is you've got to be willing to come in and say, okay, I understand that I may not get paid right away, but we're all going to eat at the same time. We're all going to make money together, but we have to earn it. So that's really it. So just that's been the biggest challenge is getting us as black people on large scales to be willing to put the effort and energy into this project.
Well, you've got a supporter in me. I mean, I don't know how that's going to manifest itself, but I'm very impressed. It sounds like a great adventure that you're going to have. I want to thank you. Thanks a lot, Roy, for stopping in and sitting down and chatting with everybody here. I hope you enjoyed your time here.
Oh, man, I did. I loved it. I want to thank you guys, and I've already mentioned it to a couple of folks. Don't worry, I'm going to be trying to have a conversation to get you all on the Talk Network. So,
okay. Well, that'd be good.
We're going.
I would admit
let me tell you this really quick. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I definitely want to say that, I'm a huge science fiction fan, and I want to be able to help broaden that market and give you guys who are the actual, science fiction novelists and all the artists, give you guys that opportunity to get your stuff out there in front of a whole bunch of folks like us who love it but don't have a clue that you're out there and you're available.
Well, thank you very much. So we'll talk about that soon. And plus, I'm going to invite you back for a future show or two. Is that okay?
Anytime you guys need me, man, just let me know. I'm here.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to the skipper to give the last thoughts, and we're going to call this a night. I want to thank everybody who listened. I want to thank all the people who checked this out as a podcast. Be sure to tell all of your friends about the show. If you can't tune in live, very shortly after each show, it gets posted up as a podcast up on the TalkShoe website, plus there's links at blacksciencefictionsociety.com. So please let people know that where we are, what we do, and that this show is always available. Skipper, what do you got for us?
Oh, as always, I wanted to thank our guests for coming on. It's been really interesting getting to know Roy in a more intimate fashion, knowing all the things that he's been doing and the things that he's going to be doing. I'm astounded, and we're going to have to talk more about some of that because we kind of cross over on some of those lines. Also, as usual, to thank every listener for tuning in and each future listener for tuning in the podcast format. Also, for our host, as always, doing a fantastic job. And thank you for the support that everyone has shown for the site, for the magazine, for the book, for the radio show. It's greatly appreciated. And probably going to shut it down, and I may be back over in the chat room in a few minutes on the main site. Also, Roy, could you give them the address for your radio show that I often tune into during the day?
Okay. The easiest thing to do probably now is to join us on Facebook because we're actually, along with my launch, we're actually doing some rebranding of the Sky City stuff too. But if you can look us up on Facebook at Sky City Media Group as well as JERICHO Broadcast Networks. Join either one of those two groups, and what we will do is I post every morning. We post the links to the show that it's in there, so the link to get to it will always be there. That's the easiest way to get to us from the Facebook perspective right now. And even for my company relaunch and everything, the JERICHO Broadcast Networks and the Sky City Media Group are the best ways to get to us as we go through our changes.
Okay, great. I want to encourage you also to plop some of that information in our events calendar when you're doing things, and then also provide a link on your Black Science Fiction Society page for the various things that you're into.
Okay, cool. We'll definitely make sure we do that.
Thank you again,
right.
everybody. I appreciate it.
All right, and thank you, everybody. We're going to tie up the show here. And Roy, just hang on for a couple seconds after the recording is over. I want to ask you a couple questions. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back again next week with another exciting guest. And I personally look forward to seeing everybody again. Have a good night.
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 Good night.